Hi my fellow potters, Marie here from Pottery Crafters. Did you ever bisque fire your pottery and then wonder, how am I going to glaze this one? Well, I have. In this video, I've chosen 7 different glaze combinations for you to choose from. I'm going to show you how I glazed them and how they turned out. And it's always good to get some ideas on glazing. You may want to try a few or all 7 combinations. All the supplies used in this video are listed for you in the show notes below. Let's start glazing. Before glazing, it's best to clean your bisqueware. This gets any ceramic dust off of your pottery that may have accumulated during the bisque firing process. I've heard recently that some potters skip this process. I'm not going to take the chance with any ceramic dust interfering with the glazes. No intense washing is involved. Just wipe the bisqueware down with a clean damp sponge. Only takes a few minutes. Totally worth it for me. Also make sure your hands are clean and dry, or wear gloves. Apply wax resist to the bottom of your pottery that will be in contact with the kiln shelf or your cookie. I'm going to use these disposable foam brushes by CM Tools. They come in 3 sizes: small, medium, and large. I'm going to use the medium. Once the wax resist is dry, you can start glazing. I'm going to use Amaco Snow with a little bit of Amaco Sky. I added about 1/4 cup of the Sky Blue to the snow to get a nice soft blue color. I'll start by brushing the glaze on the outside first, horizontally. These Celadon glazes are very mixable and very stable. Then the inside horizontally. The glaze does soak in on the first application, making it a little more difficult to brush on. Let it dry and apply a second coat of the snow with a little sky blue. Vertically. I love these AMAGIC brushes. They work really well. They hold the glaze really well. I've tried other brushes, but always go back to the AMAGIC brushes. Another coat on the inside. After the first coat, the glazes always brush on much smoother. It's always good to switch off horizontally and vertically. This always helps with brush marks. And let it dry. Now I'm going to use Amaco Blue Rutile. I love this glaze so much I bought it by the gallon. Dip the bowl in the blue rutile about 1/3 of the way down. Then place it on an Amaco jar so it doesn't drip down. Let it dry, then fire to cone 5 with a 20-minute hold. Let's see how it turned out. Now this is interesting. I love the color that the snow and the sky produce together. And the blue rutile is more of a darker gray blue. I actually could have dipped it twice. Being a flowing glaze, it didn't flow much at all. It's still a nice bowl. I love the color combination. And it does have some nice flow marks on the inside. This is a great combination. Let's check out the next glaze combination. For this bowl, I'm going to start with Amaco Toasted Sage. Pour the toasted sage in the bowl, then flip it upside down to make sure all of the glaze runs off of the inside of the bowl. Now I wrapped the tape around the bowl because I wasn't going to put the toasted sage on the outside, but I changed my mind. Placing it on my plastic lid, brush a coat of toasted sage on the bottom, remove the tape, and pour some toasted sage on the outside. Make sure I get all the way around. When I can't grab onto a piece of pottery when I'm pouring, I'll use my dipping tongs. Works out really well, but I have to make sure I hold on tightly. I'll brush the extra glaze off the bottom of the bowl. Let the excess glaze drip off. Now let it dry. Once it dried, I'm going to apply Amaco Smoky Merlot to the inside and outside of the bowl. Pouring it on the inside, flipping it over, allowing the excess glaze to run off. Then use my dipping tongs. Make sure I get a good grip. Pour the Smoky Merlot over the outside of the bowl. Now remember, when pouring, you don't want the glaze to be too thick or too thin. You want to go for the consistency of heavy cream. Using my brush, I'm going to wipe off the extra glaze. Remove the glaze from the foot that touches the kiln shelf or cookie with a sponge. After I let it sit for about 10-15 minutes, take it off the plastic lid and let the bowl dry completely, then fire it at cone 5 with a 20-minute hold. Let's see how it turned out. Oh, this is nice. I love the colors. It has a deep purple and a light purple. And the pattern with the oil spots. I love the pattern that the toasted sage creates when layered with other glazes. I do use the toasted sage a lot for just the inside of a mug and bowl and other pottery. It just has a beautiful color and it coats nicely and leaves a nice smooth finish. Now so far I've only done the Indigo float and the Smoky Merlot. Now that I see the results, I'm going to be using different glazes over the toasted sage. It's interesting how the toasted sage doesn't make the other glaze flow that much. More so, it gives it those oil spots, which I think is a beautiful pattern. And I do like the light and dark purple that it created. I'm quite surprised by this. I'll definitely be doing this toasted sage and Smoky Merlot combination again. Let's check out the next glaze combination. For this glaze combination, I'm going to use a candle holder. I'll start with Amaco Obsidian. I'm going to pour it into the candle holder. Now this is a bit tricky because it does have holes in it. Just keep rotating and pouring the glaze. See, I missed some on the inside. Just keep pouring it in and flipping it upside down. One more spot. See how it can be tricky with the holes? It is still faster than brushing though. Now place the candle holder on the plastic lid. Let the extra glaze flow down. Once it dried for about 10 or 15 minutes, lift the candle holder off the plastic lid and let the glaze on the rim dry. Once it's dry, I'm going to use Amaco Honeydew Flux. Brush the honeydew on over the obsidian. This is one of many Flux glazes that Amaco carries. I have a video on 6 of the Flux glazes. I left a link for you below in the show notes. And see if you'd like to try one or all of them. And one coat on the inside. Brush any glaze off that's pooled around the holes. And make sure every hole has been covered with the honeydew. And let it dry. Now I'll dip the candle holder in the honeydew just to the holes. Then I'll brush one more coat on the rest of the candle holder, only on the outside. I don't want to pour the glaze on the holes this time because the glaze may get too thick. Now that the honeydew is dry, I'm going to use Amaco Indigo Float. Dip the rim in the indigo float and set it on my spice container to allow any extra glaze to drip off instead of down onto the candle holder. Let it dry and fire to cone 5 with a 20-minute hold. Let's see how the candle holder turned out. Oh, this turned out beautiful. I'm glad I dipped the glaze on the rim one more time with the indigo float. It flowed down the sides beautifully and the inside also. Oh, I really like the inside. Beautiful. And the glaze just cascades down. I love the pattern that it creates as it flows down the candle holder. And I used just enough glaze where it didn't flow over the foot and onto my cookie. You can hit the like button anytime during this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever a new video comes out. I will definitely be using this combination again. Let's check out the next glaze combination. I'll start with Amaco Weeping Plum. Brush a coat of Weeping Plum on this tiny bowl on the inside. Let it dry. Then brush on a coat of the Weeping Plum on the outside. Another coat of Weeping Plum on the inside. And let this dry. Now I'm going to use Spectrum Kimchi. Now this glaze loves to run. Dip it around the rim about halfway down. I do have good results whenever I use Spectrum and Amaco glazes together. Then set it on my underglaze bottle so the extra glaze drips off the rim. Fire it to cone 5 with the 20-minute hold. Let's see how it turned out. Now this is a great combination. The Weeping Plum is a beautiful pink color. The kimchi is more of a pink glaze. So I'm surprised by the light color that it produced, which is really nice. And even though the Weeping Plum is a celadon glaze, it did flow down the bowl more. I use these tiny bowls all the time. They're great for holding spices and vitamins, even for placing a ring on while you're working on your clay. Let's check out the next glaze combination. For this bowl, I'll start with Amaco Toasted Sage. Start by pouring it in the inside of the bowl, flipping it upside down, and set it on a plastic lid. Now grab my dipping tongs, then pour the toasted sage on the outside of the bowl. Now this is a brushable glaze, but works very well when poured. Just make sure that the glaze is not too thick. And set it on the plastic lid for about 10 minutes to let the extra glaze flow off of the bowl. Wipe the excess glaze off the foot with a sponge. Once the toasted sage is thoroughly dried on the bowl, I'm going to use Amaco Indigo Float and do the same process that I did with the toasted sage. Pour it on the inside, flip it upside down, and pour the indigo float on the outside. I find Amaco glazes to be very forgiving. I can add up to 1/8 of a cup of water to thin out the glazes for pouring. Brush off any extra glaze on the bottom. I'll lightly brush some of the indigo float off the outside because I don't want the glaze to be too thick. It may flow down and off the bowl. I let the bowl sit and dry for about 10 to 15 minutes before flipping it over and allowing the rim to dry. Then fire to cone 5 with a 20-minute hold and see how the glaze turned out. This is a unique effect that the toasted sage has on the glaze that it's layered over. I'm not sure if the toasted sage has this effect on all the other glazes, but it sure looks great with the indigo float. I do see the colors of the toasted sage on the rim of the bowl. The toasted sage does have a light gray, pink and green hue to it, and the indigo float has a beautiful deep blue color. When layered together, they create a cool oil spot effect. I'm very pleased with the results of this bowl. It's just beautiful. Will you try this glaze combination? Let's check out the next glaze combination. For this glaze combination, I'll start with Amaco Poppy. Paint it on with the brush. This is a Celadon glaze. Brush the outside horizontally. And of course, the bisqueware does absorb the glaze a lot faster on the first coat. And sometimes it doesn't go on as smoothly as we'd like. Flip it over and glaze the inside of the bowl. Horizontally also. I do like working with the Amaco Celadon glazes. Get the rim. Now let it dry and apply a second coat of the poppy, this time vertically. I find when brushing I get less streaks when I switch off horizontal and vertically. Sometimes I'll forget, but most of the time I'll get it right. Get the inside vertically also. And then the rim. Let it dry. Now I'm going to do a third coat. Horizontally inside the bowl first. Then horizontally on the outside. Once it's dry, I'm going to dip it in Amaco Moss Mist. Now I don't have too much moss mist, so I have to tilt the container and swirl the bowl around a bit. The moss mist is on the thicker side. The moss mist cracked and peeled away from the bowl. When I left the oatmeal glaze that peeled away from my pot, the glaze fell off and onto my cookie and the kiln shelf. I was rather upset about that. So this is what I do to prevent that. Brush it with water, and it pushes the glaze back down onto the pot. Now it worked with the oatmeal. I'll see if it works with the moss mist. Let the water go into the cracks and then gently brush down the glaze that has peeled up. Now if you ever get cracking like this, it's best to place the pottery on a cookie. So if the glaze does fall off, it won't fall on your kiln shelf. This technique seems to work really well for me. Now I'll let this dry thoroughly and fire it in the kiln at cone 5 with a 20-minute hold. So let's see how it turned out. Well, I'm very happy with it. No chunks of glaze seem to fall off on the inside. I love how the moss mist flowed down the inside of the bowl. It flowed like that because the glaze was really thick. The outside looks really nice too. I like how it flowed down the bowl. The poppy just has a beautiful, vibrant orange color, and it has a nice, smooth, glossy look. I like the combination with the poppy and the moss mist. I'll definitely do this glaze combination again. Let's check out the next glaze combination. I'm starting with Amaco Honey Flux. Brush one coat on the outside and one coat on the inside. Let it dry and brush another coat of Honey Flux on the outside. I use Honey Flux a lot. This is one of my favorite glazes. And brush another coat on the inside. And now the Honey Flux comes in a gallon container. Let it dry. And one more coat of honey flux on the outside and on the inside. Let it dry. I'll use Amaco Sapphire Float next. Dip the bowl just around the rim. Then place it upside down on one of my small underglaze bottles. Let it dry. Fire it to cone 5 with the 20-minute hold. Let's see how it turned out. I love how the sapphire float flows down with the honey flux. Just creates a beautiful pattern. And the sapphire float has such of a beautiful rich blue color. And the pattern it creates is similar to the indigo float, but the color is deeper. And you notice that the glaze flows down more because of the honey flux. I love these small bowls. They come in so handy. Just wonderful little ramekin bowls. I find the honey flux and the sapphire float is a great combination. Well, there you have it. 7 different glaze combinations that you can try. I hope I've given you some great ideas for glazing. You may want to go with the oil spot look. I do love the toasted sage and the smoky Merlot and indigo float combination. And I will try different glazes over the toasted sage. If you care for a combination that flows or one that's more stable, or both. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever a new video comes out. You watching helps me to make more videos like this one. Now head on over to my 21 glaze tips video or my bubble glaze video. If you do, I get to play with more clay. Let's stay dirty